Send it over to Cam. All right, Cam. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. And hi, everybody. Thanks all for being here. We've run a lot of these virtual trainings on different topics, as well as in-person trainings, of course, at the WHO GIS Center. And this round of these QGIS trainings, we have this one in English and then another this week in Spanish. And it broke our records for enrollment. So we have 123 people here right now. That's great. Glad you're all here, and we're happy to offer GIS trainings to help you in your roles as best we can. I think we'll just jump right in and get started. Hopefully you can see these slides okay on my screen. And just a few slides, and then we'll spend most of the time. We have 4 hours scheduled for this meeting. We'll spend most of the time in QGIS doing these step-by-step exercises. But first, just a little background on QGIS and what we're all doing here. So hopefully we've helped you previous to this meeting download QGIS, install it on your computer. If you have not, we might not have a ton of time to troubleshoot that, or we won't in this meeting just due to high enrollment. But if you haven't installed it yet, you can go to download.qgis.org, and there you can download for any operating system that you have. If you get that started now, there's a chance you could catch up, but it might take some time. But like we said, this will be recorded, and you can check back later. I think I'll turn my camera off just for now for bandwidth. And great, so here's our team at the GIS Center for Health. We're based in Geneva, Switzerland, but we're not really, not too many of us are there. We have people scattered across the globe. So I'm coming to you from the West Coast of the United States. So again, excuse my voice if it's a little scratchy. It's early in the morning for me, but thanks you all for tuning in. I saw somebody was in the East Asia, and it was quite late at night, so thanks all for being here regardless of what time of day it is. We'll plug this again at the end, but here's our hub. You can go to, you can scan this QR code or go to this URL. We have all information about our trainings on this page, as well as our other services. So we offer geospatial data, map requests. So if you are an affiliate with WHO or staff member, you can request maps from us and we can make them for you. We can make sure that they're legally compliant and ready for publishing or sharing externally. And we have a lot of other resources. So please do check out our website, and you can contact us at this email, gissupport@who.int, with any questions. Cool, so we're here to learn QGIS, but that's just one tool. So let's talk about quickly, for those who might be new, to what is GIS. So GIS is the science of mapping, and it's a very powerful tool, and it's been used in health actually for quite some time. With GIS, we can do lots of things with spatial data, things that relate directly to health, like cases of diseases, but also other things that are indirectly related to health, like land cover and land use and roads to assess access, all sorts of things. And I think the great part of GIS is it can be used at all levels, from data creation or data collection to data analysis to producing maps to communicate your results. So in terms of GIS tools, there's a lot of tools out there, and today we'll learn just one of them. Many things are going more towards the web. So there's web-based GIS. There's kind of the more coding, database, data processing side of things. And then really on the left here, there's two major desktop GIS softwares. So there's QGIS that we'll learn today. And then the alternative is ArcGIS. ArcGIS Pro is the newer version, or many of you, I would guess, have maybe learned ArcMap. So those are made by a company called Esri, and most of the tools are named ArcGIS. I'll explain the differences between these in a moment, but you can kind of think of these two softwares as very similar, if not pretty much the same in their functionality. For QGIS, the great part of it and why I think we're all gathered here right now is that it's free and there's no license needed. So this is a free and open source software tool. It can work on any operating system, any computer. And because of that, there's a lot of users globally and a lot of contributors. So there's a strong community. If you need some help in the future, you can of course reach out to us, but you can also just Google up what the question you have, and there's likely some great resources by QGIS users. And it's mostly a standalone tool, but it does work well with other open source tools. Comparatively, the other one, ArcGIS Pro, which we also offer trainings on and can offer licenses, does require a license, of course, and those are not free, but we can provide those to WHO consultants and staff. ArcGIS Pro only works on the Windows operating system, but this company, Esri, that makes ArcGIS is really like a global industry leader in GIS software. So it's very great software. And there's many other software tools that plug into it. In fact, the survey that you'll complete, please do complete at the end of this training, was made with a Esri software tool that plugs in nicely with the ArcGIS products. So there's a side-by-side comparison. If you already know one of these tools, or ArcMap, the older version of ArcGIS, it'll be quite easy to pick up the other. And so today, if you learn QGIS, but in the future decide you want to jump over to the ArcGIS side of things, it'll be quite easy to transition. Great, here's some just Google trends. I updated this yesterday of Google searches globally for QGIS. And you can see it's a really growing software tool. And since we're going to be making maps, here's a map of the hotspots of QGIS Google searches. So not in a perfect way to measure usage, but the best I could come up with. And yeah, you'll see there's some hotspots of QGIS interest globally. It's also available in many languages. As I mentioned, we're offering a Spanish session this week as well. Great, so when we open it up, here's what it will look like. We'll do that in just a couple minutes. And you'll get very familiar with the interface. So up on the top, we have all these many buttons. This is the toolbar. We have some different panels on the sides that are like our menus, and we can customize and change those. And in the middle, of course, we have our map canvas. This is where we'll be viewing our map data and analyzing it, visualizing it, and making our maps. Cool. So one technical note is we're going to create a QGIS project here in just a moment. And we're going to save that as a project file, a QGIS project file. But these project files, they only remember where to find your data. So for today, we've prepared all the data that we'll use. It's in that folder that we can link to download. Some of the data will be online for the WHO base maps that we have, the custom base maps that can be used for WHO maps. So QGIS can pull data from many sources, your computer, online, other databases, but the project only remembers where that data is. So it's good to be organized. I suggest you can save your project today just in that folder of the data folder that we've shared with you. And if later you move things around and your data moves or your project file moves, some of these blue lines, these file paths can be broken and your project can get messed up. So that can cause some problems. So just this is just a word of caution to be organized and maintain those file paths or have your project and data all in one folder that doesn't move around too much. Cool. So here's some examples of maps we can make today. We're going to start with just some QGIS basics and in the end produce this simple map of WHO regions. So not the most elaborate map you've ever seen, but I think it's a great fun topic to get us started. And looking at the chat, I think we have people representing all WHO regions here on the call right now. Great. Before our 5-minute break, we'll do that later. I'll jump over to QGIS and show you how to open it up. So if you have QGIS installed, you can fire it up. It might take a moment to open. And once you're there, you should be on a page that looks like this. You might not have any recent projects here. That's okay. But in the top left corner, you can go up to Project and then New to start a new project. And hopefully you can see my screen all right. So if you go to Project New, you should have a big blank map. Let me adjust my screen. It will probably look something more like this. And I'll give you all a moment just to make sure you can get there, and we'll all get started. And if you are following along, I guess we should note where to download the data. So maybe one of my co-facilitators can share in the chat the link to, let's see, I have to open it up right here. I think there's been kind of 2 links, but if someone can share that in the chat, it's a link to this Google Drive. You can click download right here, and that'll download a zip file. And that'll be everything we need today for this 4-hour workshop. Once you have that downloaded, it'll be a zip file. And with zip files, of course, we have to unzip them, extract them. So you can move that zip file somewhere you like on your computer. If you're on a Windows machine, somewhere on your C drive is good, but whatever is your organizational system. And then be sure to right-click on that zip file and then say extract all to unzip that data, that folder. Often when we do GIS trainings, this is one of the harder parts of the training is to make sure just everybody has the data and the software open and troubleshooting that. But once we have that, we'll be all good to go. So make sure you extract or unzip. If you're on a Apple computer, you just have to double click that zip file and it will automatically extract or unzip. And once you have that, you should be able to peek inside of this folder and see we have some data prepared for you here. And we'll jump over to that using QGIS in just a moment. Okay, so once again, just giving everyone a moment to open up their QGIS. Should be a big blank screen. You can go to Project and New Project in the top left corner. And then be sure that you download using the links shared in the chat. Thank you, team, for sharing those links. Download that zipped folder, unzip it or extract it, extract all, and then you can peek into the folder and see some of the data we'll be using. I'll explain what each of these files is as we go through the lesson today. Great. So if everybody is there, And if not, you can please paste questions in the chat, and our great team of people will swoop in to help and answer any questions. For the question, developer cannot be verified, you might just need to right click and say open. Sometimes that can help, or if it's a warning that you can bypass, you should be able to bypass that. It is a legitimate software tool, I promise. Sometimes, however, if you're on a work computer, there can be IT permissions issues, of course. Cool. So for those of you that are there, let's get started. We can add some data. For those of you who weren't able to install before, remember we will be recording this, so you'll be able to catch up as well. So let's go to Layer on the top menu and Add Layer. And let's add a vector layer. So we haven't talked much yet about the different types of GIS data, but we're going to start with adding a vector layer of global administrative zero, so like country or state level polygons. So I can go to Layer on the top toolbar, Add Layer, and Add Vector Layer. This menu should open. And in GIS software, we get a lot of these menus on top of menus on top of menus on top of menus. It can be a little confusing, especially if you're juggling my screen and yours and everything on one laptop. But when we go to add some data, this menu should open. We can just hit this ... button here and navigate over to our data folder. And you can see there's several files in here, but the one we're going to add first is this one called health boundaries. So there's actually a few map layers in here. We're just going to add one to start. We're going to add this health boundaries.gpkg. This is called a geopackage file type. Don't worry too much about that right now, but we should be able to click open on these health boundaries. You can see the file path right here, and we can click add. Another menu, I warned you, there's menus on top of menus, will pop up. And for right now, let's just choose, you can see there's 3 different layers that we have the option of adding. Let's just choose this top one. It says ADM0. So this is administrative level 0 polygons. So country level polygons globally. And we can click add layers. You'll see in the background, my map is added. And I can close this window. I can show one alternative to that. If you weren't able to navigate that way, another great way to add data in QGIS is if you just open a file browser. So this black window here is not my QGIS window, but just a file browser. I can always just drag and drop also any files over onto QGIS like this, and it'll be the same process. So that's often an easier way to add data. If you're not sure what a file is, if it's a GIS file or not, just give it a try. Drag and drop it onto QGIS and see what happens. See if it can open. So by doing that way, I could again choose this admin 0 and hit add layers. So now I have 2. I'll remove the other one. And note your map will be a different color. Every time you add a layer, it'll be assigned a random color. So don't worry if your map sometimes looks different than mine. That's totally fine. Cool. Thanks, team, for helping with some questions in the chat. And yeah, I think there should be no permissions issues if you use that Google Drive link. Note that there's the PDF modules I can show that you can follow along with right here that are taking us step by step through everything we're doing today. And a separate link is to download this zip folder for the data. So I know there's a lot of windows to juggle between the my shared screen, your QGIS, and these documents, but hopefully you can do it all right. Cool. Now that we've added some data, let's save our projects so that if we wanted to close the program now, we could jump back. So let's go to Project, Save As, and I suggest just saving it in that same data folder where our workshop data is. I'll call it, let's see, June 2024 QGIS training. And I suggest every few minutes just hitting save, the save button in the top left corner here, that blue floppy disk button, and that will save your projects. That way you can close the program and come back anytime you need. Okay. So now that we have our project saved, we have some data displayed on our map. I will note here that this map is not legally compliant with WHO yet. It's showing some things that we wouldn't show on a final map product. And we'll talk more about that when we add some base maps, especially our disputed borders and area maps. But for now, let's just investigate this data and check it out. So if you have a mouse, you can just use the mouse wheel to scroll in or out, just like you would on Google Maps or any web map kind of application. So we can zoom in and out. If your icon, it should be this little hand to start. Looks like that. That means you can just click and drag to pan around. So we can explore this map. That. You can zoom into wherever you're tuning in from. And a couple tips. Sometimes you might zoom in somewhere and be lost. You don't know where you are related to your data. In that case, you can, if you can't find the context or where your data is, you can always right-click on a layer and say zoom to layers. That will take you back to show the full extent of that layer. So again, if I zoom in somewhere very close or very far, I can right-click and say zoom to layer and go there. We only have one layer now, but you'll notice there's a checkbox on that left side. So we can turn layers on and off. And soon we'll add more and more layers here, and that will be more necessary. Okay. So some other things we can do so this is called vector data. So these are polygons. Vector data can also be points, and we'll add some points later, or lines, such as roads or rivers or boundaries. And with all vector data, it's not just these shapes that we see on the map. So in my case, these pink polygons, these pink areas, but we also have information attached to each one. So to investigate that, we can, let's do it this way first. Right-click on our layer and say Open Attribute Table. You'll note that this table opens and there's a whole bunch of rows, 241 rows, and each row has a bunch of columns with lots of information. If your window is like this floating around, you can push this button on the farthest right on the attribute table, or you can, it might not work because I'm sharing my screen, but with any window in QGIS, you can also drag it and move it to kind of pin it to different parts of the QGIS window. You can also push this button on the far right side that says Dock Attribute Table, and it'll lock it down there to the bottom to reduce the number of cluttered windows. Okay, so in this table, you can see it's quite large, but each row here we can call a feature. For example, I can select one row by clicking on it. Here's Ghana, for example, where we just did a great QGIS training. And you can see that if I select that row by clicking on the row number, that feature, that country in this case, becomes yellow on the map. So Ghana here on the map, that shape shown on the map relates to this row in the table and all the associated information in this row. Yeah, so once again, to get to the table, anytime you want to open an attribute table, you can right-click and say Open Table, and that will take you right there. So in the table, you can click around. You can even select, hold down Control or Shift. You can select multiple features on the table and note how they will show up on the map. Similarly to before, maybe we selected one. So here I've selected Japan. I can right-click on that and say Zoom to Feature, and it'll take me just to that selected feature. So take a minute. I'll give you all a minute just to explore and play around. I encourage you, and I say this in every GIS training, I encourage you to be bold. You can't break it. You can always just restart your project if something goes really awry. But I think a great part of this training to really learn, just click around and explore things. Let's see in the chat, somebody says my table looks different. If it looks like this, that's probably the most likely thing it can look different. Just in this bottom right corner, click this very bottom right button that says switch to table view. Yeah, that'll I think yours looks like this. Just click right here. Switch to table view. Okay. Now we can do the opposite. So maybe sometimes we want to select layers on the map and we want to view them in the attribute table. So now we're going to start pushing some buttons on this top toolbar here. So note that your buttons might be in a slightly different order or arrangement than mine, but you should have a bunch of buttons up here on this top toolbar. And let's select this one with the yellow box and it has a little white arrow. This turns on selection mode. So the yellow box with a white arrow. And this will allow you to, instead of pan, move the map side to side or up and down. This will allow you to select features. So we can select multiple features or just one. If you hold down Shift or Control, you can select multiple features. And you'll notice that the corresponding features are selected in the attribute table. So I know I'm spending a lot of time on this, but this is a very important concept, is that in GIS, when we're using this vector data, which is often the most common data for basic GIS tasks. Remember that it's not just what you see on the map, the shapes, but we can have a lot of information attached to each feature. And we can use that to make maps as we'll do later today. Since this feature, we have 241 features in this layer. That can be quite a lot. So you might only want to see the ones you have selected. So one way to do that is in the bottom left corner of your attribute table, you have this drop down or drop up menu. And you can change that to say show selected features only, which will just show the ones that you have currently selected. So take a minute, just play around, select things. And again, just noting that right now these boundaries and borders shown don't comply with all of our WHO legal requirements, and we'll show how to remedy that in just a moment by adding some other layers. So I see one question in the chat, does admin 0 contain provincial, regional, district boundaries? No. We do have a layer in that same geo package that is administrative level 1. So that's like states or regions or provinces. You can play around with that data. And on our GIS hub, the website we linked to earlier, we do have available for download global administrative data at all levels. Well, level 0, so national, level 1, and level 2. Some countries or states, we have level 3 as well. And we're doing our best to always keep those updated as those change often. Note that we do, for many countries, have different health boundaries compared to political boundaries. So we do our best to stick to the health boundaries when applicable. So sometimes our administrative boundaries might differ from political boundaries in certain cases, in certain places. Great. There's one other tool. So sometimes using this table here and selecting might be a little cumbersome. I'll just X out of my attribute table for now. I'll give my project a save. You can click on alternatively. Some people like this option as well. On this top toolbar, there's this little blue circle with an eye in it that says identify features. Again, that button might be in a little bit different place than on my screen, but somewhere you should see that blue circle with an eye in it. And this is called identify. So now if we click on any features on the map, we can see this is just that same attribute table kind of rearranged vertically. We can see all the information we have for each of these features on the right side there. So that is this identify features button. So the information we see there is quite minimal. It has each state's name in many languages. There's often some cryptic or hard things to understand in any attribute table, and that's okay. Don't feel like you should know or understand right away what all of this information means. But there are some useful things that we can use, notably which WHO region each of these polygons belongs to. And we'll use that later on today as one of our main things. We also have the name, of course, in a few of these fields, and we can use that as well. Okay, so that's this identify features, very similar to this selection but slightly different. Okay, so keep playing around. Hopefully you all are clicking on your maps, selecting and identifying things, and getting used to zooming around and exploring your world map here. I can X out of this panel. Cool. So that brings us to the end of module 1. I think we could keep going, and maybe we'll take a short break at the top of the hour. Hopefully that sounds okay to everybody. And we can keep going, and let's talk about next a little bit of a confusing topic, which is projections, but it's something that's important and kind of unavoidable to talk about in any GIS. So in the bottom right corner of your QGIS window, you should see this button that says EPSG 4326. It's okay if that shouldn't mean anything to you right now. But when we click that button in a moment, that'll allow us to change the coordinate reference system or the projection of our map. So if the shape of this map looks a little strange to you, that's okay. It looks different than most maps we interact with, world maps, in fact. So we can change that. So every map kind of has to stretch or compress the round globe, the round planet, onto a flat screen or flat paper. So that takes some distortion or some stretching and compressing. And there's different ways that we can do that. So if we click this button in the bottom right corner, let's all do this together. At EPSG, right now it should say 4326. You'll see that there's this long list of other projections that we can use. So I would suggest let's all change our maps to, if you search here 3857, you should find in this little drop-down menu, and I can add this in the chat. You search 3857. This is called pseudo Mercator or web Mercator. So this is often the best projection to create or at least analyze your data. Maybe on your final map product, you might choose a different one. And for really precise measurements in small areas, you would choose different projections. But this one is great for our purposes today. Projections are a confusing topic, but we got to talk about them. Just give a little intro in an Intro to GIS workshop like this. So again, I searched 3857 here. In this drop-down menu, you should see this pseudo Mercator projection. And you can click OK. And you'll notice that now the shape of my map drastically changed. I can zoom to my layers here. And in the training materials, I can jump over to those and show. You'll see here how different projections look. So again, we're not changing the actual data. We're just changing how we're stretching or compressing the round globe onto our flat screens. So originally we were in this projection. A lot of GIS data comes in this projection, and so your QGIS will, by default, show your map in that projection. Here's a nice one that we use for many of our WHO maps, Eckert 3. And then we just changed to our pseudo Mercator. That was that 3857. That's this projection here. So this is a very common one, as I'll show on my screen here. Very common projection. It's not perfect, or no projection is quite perfect because we're taking something round and making it flat. You'll notice the big difference is that this one, the further you get from the equator, size is greatly exaggerated. So Greenland, Canada, Scandinavia, Russia, all appear much larger on this projection than they do in reality on the actual globe. So that's an imperfection of this projection, and many people say that it was clear who chose this projection. Maybe it has a colonial twist or perspective on it, which is fair. However, many applications and platforms use this as a default projection, especially for online maps. So no projection is perfect, including this one, but we'll use this 3857 projection, this Web Mercator projection for the rest of this workshop. And it will help us in our next step when we add some base maps. Great. So usually there's a lot of questions about projections. I think due to our high enrollment here, we have a great big crew. We can't answer too many, but feel free to send us an email or stop by our office hours and we can help you if you have any projection issues. In general, if you add some GIS data and it shows up totally in the wrong place or it seems all distorted, it's usually just an issue with how the data is projected, and it can be pretty easily fixed in most cases. Okay, so give your project a save and we'll keep moving. And again, I see some questions in the chat about accessing our WHO boundaries. Yeah, that's great. Hopefully we can fix any problems with that. But for the workshop today, you don't need those. For sure, it's a great reference and please do download those in the future. But for today, these are the same admin 0 and admin 1 boundaries available in that data folder that you downloaded. So you don't need those necessarily for today's workshop. But we'd be happy to help you get them in the future. Okay. Next, let's do something fun right before we take a short break at the top of the hour. So let's change some colors. So maps are visual communication, and we need to make them nice to look at. So there's two ways that we can change what's called the symbology, the colors and the way that the data is represented. If you right-click and go down to Properties on your layer, so I right-clicked, or you can double-click a layer, and this menu will open here. Or right-click on your Health Boundaries Admin 0 layer and go to Properties. This menu should open. And in this menu, you can change how your data looks. So we can change the color, for example. I can make it this nice green. And here we can change all sorts of things, the outlines and many things. So this part of GIS is very fun, is playing with the symbology and how data is visualized, but it also takes quite some time. So take a minute to play around, change the symbology of your layers. You can change the colors. There's also many suggested or default symbology styles here. We do have a WHO style guide, so we have kind of suggested color ramps that fit the brand and color schemes of many WHO publications and documents. Many map requests, people always want their maps to be blue, like this, which fits the WHO brand, but is also funny because blue is usually water on maps. So that's a thing our colleagues we always laugh about is sometimes we break some map making rules by making everything blue. Okay, so hopefully you're playing around, changing some colors on your map. And we can do that for any type of layer that we add. We can change how it's symbolized. Of course, right now we're just changing everything. They all look, each polygon, each feature looks the same. But in a moment, we will change that and symbolize it in a different way. I see one question in the chat. I think sometimes QGIS, especially if you have multiple screens or multiple windows, some of these windows might get cut off. So if you only see save symbol in advanced, you might just need to adjust your window and scroll down. And at the bottom here, you should have this OK button. That can be common with any of these windows, is you might need to adjust their size, especially
Cam, you're muted.
how about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. How long ago did I use? I can repeat that last step. Sorry about that.
Yeah, just the last step.
Okay. Cool. So yeah, to save a little time, sometimes we have windows on top of windows in QGIS. Instead of opening this properties every time, you can push this little paintbrush button here, just above on your layers panel on the left side. That little paintbrush icon will open this panel on the right with this same symbology menu, how we change the colors and anything that is visualizing the data, we can change that here on the right side. So I usually just keep this panel open on the right is our symbology. Again, if you lose that anytime, you can just push this little paintbrush icon here on your layer panel. Hopefully that helps with some of those questions about not seeing the full windows. Great, so last step let's do before we take a short tea break is not only can we change how everything looks in single symbol. Here, our symbology is called single symbol. We're showing everything the same. But we can also use QGIS to unveil those attributes from that attribute table to symbolize things according to some data we have about them. So if we click here, for example, categorized, let's all do this together. I'm in my layer styling panel here, and I changed my data from single symbol to categorized, the option below. You'll notice that my map disappeared, but that's okay. Let's select under value WHO region. And then we just have to push this button classify here. And QGIS will look through that column region, WHO region, in the attribute table and find all the unique values. So here are the 6 regions, and it will color code our map features accordingly. Right now, it's just giving some random colors, so your map will look different. And if you want, you can go one by one and change these colors to customize your maps and make them look really nice. Cool, so we are categorizing our symbols, our admin 0 polygons by their WHO region. And this is just our first example, but hopefully it proves that we can use this GIS to symbolize in many different ways the underlying data on the map. Okay, so here, one by one, you can check on and off these different regions and see accordingly. And as I mentioned, you can also click on these and customize, change the colors as you like. By default, there will always be this option when we categorize some data of all other values. In our case, I don't think we have any features in this category, so those won't show up. But we do have our 6 global regions here. Great. Feel free now and throughout the rest of the workshop, if you have this nice colorful regions map, feel free to take a screenshot and throw it in the chat so we can all see. And at that, I think let's take a 5-minute break. You can grab some tea, use the restroom, and then we'll all gather, let's say about 8 minutes past the hour. Awesome, beautiful maps. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Cam. We'll all regroup in 5 minutes.
Okay, hopefully a 5-minute break is helpful for everyone. We'll get started again in about 1 minute. And thank you for sharing all the maps. They're looking great and helps us know that people are following along. So thank you for sharing. Feel free anytime for the rest of the workshop to share a picture of your maps. Much appreciated. Thank you. Okay, we'll continue on here. Just to note, if you are following along on our tutorial document, which should be a very thorough step-by-step document of what we do here today. So feel free to refer back to this in the future or use it if you miss any steps. But we are on page 17 here. It says exercise 3.1. We will now add some base maps to our maps. And I see the most recent map shared, Nam Wen. Thank you for sharing. It looks like you're one step ahead of us. You already have a base map on there. So that's great. Let's add a base map to our maps, and this will be a really useful option for you. Of course, whenever we make a map, we don't need to remap the whole world. There are many free options available to us to be our background map, or what we call a base map in GIS. And that can be really helpful for overlaying our data on top of that. And there's many options available. So to do that, we need to add a plugin to QGIS. There's many great plugins. These are little additional tools or add-ons. Even WHO has produced QGIS plugins in the past. And we'll add one to add specifically base maps. Great. Oh, I see Georgie. Very, very nice Euro map using a different projection, a creative projection. So that's great. Cool. So if you go up to your top toolbar and go to Manage and Install Plugins, let's click that. If you haven't done this already, Manage and Install Plugins. It will open this window for plugins. And let's click all on the left side and let's search for a plugin called Quick Map Services. All one word. I can even put it in the chat if you want to search that, but Quick Map Services. And then in the bottom right corner, it should say Install Plugin. For me, I already have it. So yours should say Install, and you can click Install, and it should only take a moment. So once you install, you can say Close. So we've just added the plugin. Again, I'll go over the steps. So I went up to Plugin on the top toolbar, Manage and Install Plugins. And then I searched for Quick Map Services. And then I said Install Plugin. I think this is the #1 most installed plugin in QGIS. But you can see, here's the ones I have installed. There's many useful plugins here. So once you get going and do some more advanced QGIS things, you might come across suggestions to use different plugins. And here's where they are. Here's the list of all the available plugins. There's so many. So yeah, plugin is just this little additional toolbox. There's many built-in tools to QGIS. but plugins are these little additional ones that anybody can develop. And that's really the powerful part of QGIS being an open source, free and open source software, is it's very collaborative. So this plugin, for example, allows us to add many of the free available base maps and is a very popular plugin. So there are these little add-on extra tools we can add to QGIS. So once you've added that plugin, if you click Web on your toolbar, you should now see an option for Quick Map Services. Your list will be a little shorter than mine, but we can fix that. This is just a little setup step. I know this will be a little bit tedious, but bear with us, and your QGIS will now be set up to have many base maps in the future. If you go down to Settings here on Quick Map Services, and then click More Services. So again, I went to Web. I'll show one more time. Web on my top toolbar, Quick Map Services, the plugin we just installed, and then down to Settings. This window opens, and on this right side, More Services, you can say Get Contributed Pack. If you don't have a web toolbar, we can troubleshoot that. But I think most people should find it. And if you click this Get Contributed Back, it'll take about 10 seconds to install. Nice. So yeah, the most recent question, if you go to Quick Map Services, your list will be a little shorter, everybody's, until we add this, but you still see that option Settings right there. I see in that screenshot. You can say Settings. And now say More Services over here and Get Contributed Pack. So this will load you up not just with those two options in that most recent question, but we'll have many web map options. And once you install that contributed pack, you should see this long list of available base maps. No problem. And if there are some technical difficulties, not able to open this plugin, no problem. You can still follow along the rest of the workshop, and feel free to reach out to us or attend the office hours, and we can get you set up. The base maps are not essential for this workshop, but they are a very helpful thing in doing GIS in general. Okay, so on this, we can add all sorts of base maps. For example, maybe I'll add this OpenStreetMap standard base map. And you'll see that now I have multiple layers on the left side. And this OpenStreetMap standard OSM standard base map is a great world map for us to use as reference. So as we zoom, it will change. Let's see, I can zoom to where our training was the last 2 weeks in Akosambo, Ghana. And these base maps work just like any web map you'll use online. They will change at the scale that you're viewing. So you can explore all these options. Some base maps will show quite different things. For example, we can have Google Satellite, and we can have satellite. So if yours looks a little different, you'll note that there's many options there, and play around with these different base map options. It's okay if your screen looks slightly different than mine, but you can play around with these many different options. So if you are, for example, have a list of your health facility points and you're trying to see how accurate they are, you might want to turn on your Google Satellite and zoom in to some specific buildings and check out your points to see how accurate those points are. But in other cases, you might want to have more of like a roadmap as the background to your project. So you can add one of these more roadmap style base map options. And we'll note now that we have many data layers here. So if I go to my original health boundaries, underneath that in my layers panel, I have these base maps. But for example here, so these layers will always draw in order. So this top layer, my health boundaries, will draw on top unless I change the order. So if I drag it below, I no longer can see it. It's still checked on, you'll notice, but it's drawn below my base map. So you can drag and change the order of these things. And sometimes you might be trying to look for some data, but it's covered up by another layer. So you can uncheck things and rearrange them, what order they're drawn. And typically our base maps will go on the very bottom, right? There are background maps and they'll go on the very bottom. Okay. Okay. Great. And anytime if you lose this layers panel, for example, thank you, Boyoung, for mentioning that. You can always go to View and Panels, and this is where you can add any missing panels, or if your interface looks different, you can re-add this Layers panel. Cool. So now you have this plugin installed and the additional pack of free base maps. You'll see there's a lot of options here. So this is a really great setup now you have for QGIS to use in the future, is you have all these free available base maps to use as you need. You'll find you have some favorite ones on there that might be more useful for the style of the map you're going for and also the tasks that you'll do. And now that we have many layers, so I added, for example, these 2 base maps and I have my health boundaries. Soon we're going to add yet more layers. Remember to keep this organized. When we have many layers here on the left side, it's easy to have everything checked on or even expanded like this, and your project will become quite cluttered and confusing on which data you're looking at. So I suggest keep as few things checked turned on here as possible, just to see the current layers you're looking at. If you ever want to remove something, maybe I decide I don't need this satellite base map anymore, I can right click and say remove and say okay. And now it's gone. Of course, I can re-add it again later. And I see a question about change the language of the Google Road layer. So we'll note that, look at the different little icon beside the base maps. It's this little blue grid compared to our vector data, our health boundaries. So actually, these base maps are what's called raster data. So they're like pictures, they're images. And raster data comes in a lot of forms in GIS, but basically you can think of it as a grid of pixels, just like any picture, or it's like an image. So here, if I zoom in, for example, and I want to select some things like I did before, you'll notice I can't select anything, or I can't open the attribute table for our base maps because these are just static images. So we can't customize the colors on them. We can't look at their attributes because these are just images. So they're the background maps. We can't interact with them the same way as we can with our vector data. Hopefully that makes sense. So with different types of raster data, we can symbolize it and interact with it. But with these base maps, they're just static images. So the Google Street layer base map, for example, that's just how it is. There are some base maps available in different languages, but we can't change or customize them because that's just like a static image in the background. Hopefully that helps. Okay, so these base maps are great to get us going, but we can also add some other base maps that are WHO designed and approved and show exactly our WHO boundaries. This is quite important. Maps are inherently political, even if the topic you're mapping is not a political topic. It's important to remember that there can be some unintended meaning or implications if you draw a line in one place or name a place, a certain name versus another. Those can be very sensitive and political issues. And that's one reason why our GIS Center, we offer these map requests to help people ensure that maps don't have any accidentally unintended political faux pas or political issues. So we have strict guidelines at WHO of map products that are published or shared externally. And one way that we help standardize that is through our custom base maps. So, and we can share this link as well. On our GIS hub, we have a page under GeoData for base maps. And we'll add some of these base maps right now. So there's two types. We'll practice editing or adding these vector tile base maps. But you can also add these raster tile base maps as well. And let's add, yeah, we'll add, I think, 3 different ones here. And thank you, Betel, for sharing that link. And we'll share these exact links in the chat. Note that there was a little problem with our PDF here. And if you try to copy these links from our tutorial, they might be kind of incomplete. So let's just add the direct links we'll share in the chat. Great, so to add those, let's see. I can go up to layer. So let's all do this together. You can pause if you're doing anything else. Let's go to add layer. And then add vector tile layer. Okay, this is a little more complicated than our really nice plugin, our Quick Map Services plugin. But once you add these base maps, you'll have them on your QGIS available forever. So here, let's click a new connection. And let's choose a new ArcGIS vector tile service connection. I can go over and let's add these in the same order. I can copy this link here for our WHO base map. And this is specifically our disputed areas and borders. So here's the link in the chat. No, you'll just have to copy that link. You won't be able to open it if you click that URL. It's not like a web page. I'll paste that link right here. And I'll call this WHO disputed. I'll say June 2024. And I can say OK. You don't need to change any of these other options. So here I'll choose my June 2024 WHO disputed, and I'll say add. Oops, I added it twice. So I'll go through these steps one more time. But yeah, now you'll notice that we have this new layer that we can overlay on top of our boundaries. And these are all the WHO disputed borders and areas that we are legally compelled or mandated to show on any map products. So you'll notice that there's a few borders and areas shown here, and these are politically sensitive areas. that the legal department has decided we must comply and show these on all map products. So it's best to ask us for any of your maps if they comply. But you can also use this layer as well to get you at least quite close to being legally compliant for WHO map products. So yeah, if anybody's having access issues, we'll share that link. So that link I shared in the chat, you can just copy that link. Again, you won't be able to click it and open it in a web browser. It doesn't work like that, but you can copy it. So copy, and then go to layer, add layer, add ArcGIS REST service, or sorry, add vector tile layer. Go to new, add ArcGIS vector tile service connection, and then you'll paste that link right here. There shouldn't be any access issues doing it this way. Nice, and Georgie, I see that I can answer that question in just a moment. That's a great question. Before I do that, let's add another base map. So let's see, let's add this polygon base map with no labels. That's a good one to add, so I'll put that link in the chat as well. We'll add our own labels to our maps today. So I copied that link. I just put it in the chat. I can go to layer, add layer, again, add vector tile layer. I'll say new ArcGIS connection. I'll paste that link and I'll say WHO base map, no labels. We can leave all these options the same again and say OK. And then I can add that to my map and say close. You'll notice by default, they put it on top. So I'm going to drag that one down to the bottom. And here is our WHO base map. So this shows all of our boundaries. As I zoom in closer to a country, you'll notice that the administrative 2 and level 3, so states or provinces or regions, will show up. And this has the very specific symbology, the very specific styles that our maps are legally required to have. So all the borders, disputed borders and areas are just as the WHO legal department has decided they should be shown. So that's our base map. I can put it on the bottom, but you'll notice if I turn on our health boundaries on top, some of those disputed borders and areas, like Georgie's observation, will not be shown. So that's why we have this other layer, this disputed base map that we can then layer on top. So we kind of have a stacked map here with our base map on the bottom, some data, in our case, these global national polygons, and then this disputed base map on the top, which I can click on and off here, and you can see here are the disputed borders and areas shown. So to Georgie's question, yeah, if you're making a map just of Euro or one region, you'll see that some of these disputed borders and areas will still show up, of course. So typically we do show all land, all countries in an extent for WHO maps, maybe in like a light color underneath. But these and notably the most complex disputed borders and areas are here between India, Pakistan, and China. And you'll notice this very complex symbology scheme of different borders and gray areas, dotted and dashed lines and hatched lines. So that's a very politically sensitive area. And that's how at WHO on our maps, we symbolize that area. So if you're curious, you can look into all these. For example, between Sudan and South Sudan, there is some dashed border lines here, as well as this disputed area, gray disputed area polygon. And many water bodies, you'll notice too, are in this disputed area layer. So sometimes there are disputes over where the border falls on water bodies, and we just put those on top. So if your disputed areas are not showing on top, remember you just have to rearrange your layers. Let's have that disputed one on top and checked on. And I just always drape on top this disputed area as we're making maps. Yes, Georgie, it would be. We can show for just a specific region, although that'll be a little more complicated. And for the most part, for WHO maps, we don't exclude any areas. So we don't show like, I just did this training in Ghana. We wouldn't typically show just Ghana floating like an island all by itself. We would just show maybe in a very light color the surrounding areas. But we'll get to filtering and we can show how to do that later. Great, thank you for the questions. And I know this can be a little confusing, adding these different types of base maps and all this legal requirement stuff, but it's a very important part of GIS is knowing that maps are always a little bit of a political visualization, and we just need to be careful in how we present information because unintentionally we can make some political statements that we didn't intend to on our maps. Great. So if anybody has further questions about that, you can write them in the chat. Our facilitators can help you out. I will note that now, if you have this browser panel open on the top left, now that you've added your vector tiles, these WHO base maps, you can see I have so many here from adding them from many trainings and workshops. But on this browser panel, which we haven't used yet, there's this section that says vector tiles. These are a special kind of base map. And you should see your list of your WHO base maps here. Anytime you want to add more, you can go back to this page with all of our links to our base maps, copy and paste these and add more, and they'll show up here. So you always have quick access to these base maps in the future. Great, so hopefully that makes sense. And now we have many layers here. And we're going to add yet one more layer of some points, so a different data type. So thank you to my great co-facilitators for helping in the breakout rooms and with any questions. And yeah, keep your questions coming if you're stuck on something. We have a big team here ready to swoop in and assist. Remember to save your projects. You can do that every few minutes. And like I said before, feel free to share any screenshots of your maps in the chat, just like I did. Pierre, no, typically I'll show my WHO base map like this one, just that on the bottom. And then I will drape some data on top of it, like our health boundaries here, our national areas. And then to make the maps more legally compliant, I will put just that disputed area. So notice that base map, I can turn everything off here. It's not like a whole world map. It's just these specific disputed borders and areas. So it's just those. I can drape those on top. So that will be my topmost layer is that disputed base map. And then I'll have on the very, very bottom, the global base map. Marcel, So in QGIS, unfortunately, not all actions are undoable. You can go to edit here and say undo on some things. When we're editing data or we're making our map layout, we can undo most things, but some things in QGIS are not easily undoable. Yeah, you can try Control Z or go to edit and undo here, but you'll see for me, my most recent actions were not undoable. You can, if I click on my health boundaries here, maybe you accidentally change the style of a layer and you want to go back. This is, you can just watch this. You don't have to follow along or do this yourself, but you can click on this bottom button on the style panel, and this can take you back to your previous styles. However, not all actions are undoable. And that's one part of QGIS that could certainly improve. However, that is also one thing that saves a lot of memory. So QGIS works very well even on lightweight laptop computers. It doesn't require that too much memory or too much processing just to operate it. And there's some things that are unintentionally left out to make that the case. Nice, Agreen. Thank you for the map. It's looking beautiful. Okay, I'm on my second pot of tea here, and we're moving right along. We're making great progress, everyone. So thank you for your time and your diligence. Maps are looking really good. We can take a fun little activity here. Side note. So thanks everybody for sticking with this. If you're feeling bored, here's a funny built-in kind of joke in QGIS. If you see the coordinates down here at the bottom of your screen, you can see where it says coordinate. There, if you're feeling bored at any point, you can just type in bored right there. So B-O-R-E-D and hit enter. I'm totally serious. Please do this. Please follow along. Type in bored in the coordinate on the bottom and hit enter. And your map will now turn into this kind of puzzle. So it's a very difficult puzzle. Can take some time to try and solve this puzzle, but I've never successfully solved it. So if you're ever feeling bored at work, or you want it to make it look like you're working hard, you can do this and get this little puzzle of your current map. When you give up and you're not able to do it, you can just change any layers on your map and it will jump back to your actual work window. So QGIS has some fun kind of hidden features. This is one of them. If you type board in here, your map will turn into this little puzzle temporarily. It's a great thing to do if you're working in an office and your coworker is using QGIS and gets up to take a break. You can do this to their screen and have them be very confused when they get back. Cool. I can't see your faces, but I'm sure everyone is laughing hysterically at this QGIS, funny QGIS add-on. Okay. Thanks for the questions. And seems there was some more questions about base maps, and I think our team is taking care of those. Great. So next up, let's see where we are on our document. So we've added our base maps. We're now here starting module 3. So we'll add some data from a CSV. And we'll do a few other symbology visualization things with it. So far we've added base maps and we've added these vector polygons. But now let's add some points, okay? So if you ever have a spreadsheet, here's just in the data folder, there's this CSV. It says country ISO 3 sample case data something 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 .csv. So I can open it up in Excel. This is just a CSV, just a spreadsheet. It's a very simple spreadsheet. It has country name, these country codes. This is some sample case data. I believe these are example polio cases globally, but not authoritative official data, just some examples for our exercise. And then the most important part in this spreadsheet, I see this coordinate. We have longitude and latitude, lon and lat here. So if you have any data that has coordinates like this, for example, health facilities, structures, anything that can be points, it will be very easy if it has longitude, latitude to add it to your QGIS. So don't save. If it doesn't have longitude, latitude, it's a little more difficult. Like maybe if it's addresses, street addresses or something like that, it's possible, but a little more difficult. So in this case, it'll be quite easy to add. So the question to get out of the puzzle, just change any layers on the left side, just unclick and click, and you should jump right out of the puzzle. Cool, so let's add this CSV, this spreadsheet, and you'll notice if I just drag and drop it, you don't have to do this, you can just watch onto my QGIS. I can't zoom to it. It's just this table, right? So it's not like a spatial file yet. It's not like a shape file or a geo package, one of these GIS file types that we can just drop onto our map. It's just a table. So I'll remove that for now. And we can edit a different way, and we can basically tell QGIS, look in this column for the coordinates and plot those on the map. Okay, so let's all do this together. If you go to Layer at the top, Add Layer, and then Add Delimited Text Layer. It's the fourth option down from the top. So Layer, Add Delimited Text Layer. This is similar to the menu we added our vector layer before, but delimited text means like a spreadsheet. So QGIS likes CSV files the best. It is possible to add Excel files as well, but I suggest just saving any Excel file you have as a CSV, and we can very easily add it. So let's click this ... button in the top corner. We can navigate over to that CSV in the data folder. It says country ISO 3 sample cases data. We can click open. In the bottom, you should see this little preview of our table. And be sure that in this menu here under geometry definition, we're letting QGIS know that these are point coordinates. Hopefully, I think on most of your screens, automatically, it should have detected that. And under X field, automatically, I hope for most of you, it recognized lon and lat, longitude, latitude, as the coordinates. If not, you can manually select those. And then just to check if right here it says invalid CRS, something like that, just make sure you select. If you hit this drop-down menu, you should be able to select this WGS 84. The code here is 4326. and then it says WGS 84. This is that original projection. We had our maps, and this is the projection, or CRS, coordinate reference system, that a lot of spatial data comes in. So this is like the latitude, longitude way of calculating locations on Earth. So select that option. It should be right in your download menu, or right in the suggested drop-down menu. And we can click Add. If your Add button is grayed out, you just will have to change that projection. And I'll go through these steps one more time. If you were successful, yeah, if you're done on that, you'll choose that top one, 4326 WGS 84. Thank you for that screenshot. That's helpful for everybody to see. So the 4326 option. And if you're successful adding it, you should now see lots of these dots. One dot for each administrative zero, each country or nation globally. So one more time, to add any CSV or like spreadsheet, we can go to Layer, Add Layer, and add Delimited Text Layer. I'll search for my CSV in our workshop data folder. I just have, QGIS is pretty smart about detecting a latitude or longitude coordinate. And here we have to make sure we select the projection. So a lot of times this one, 4326, this WGS 84 is the best option. However, if depending how the data was collected, maybe it's all collected in, your work region or country or small area, it could be a different projection if it needs to be very accurate. So you can check, and you might need to play around with this if your data shows up in an incorrect place. Nice, and looks like there's one map shared in the chat, able to add these points. Cool, so if you zoom in, you'll notice the points get quite small, but there is one point inside each of our polygons. And while we help anybody with issues there, you can do the same things we did before. So explore these points. You can open the attribute table. You can see how points connect to a row in the table. And of course, you can change the style. So you can change the colors, the size, and the symbol for these points. So take a moment just to explore this new layer, and be sure if you can't see your points on your map, but you see them in your layer panel, be sure that our points are on the top. Of course, if they're on the bottom here, our other layers are covering. So we should add our points on the very top. We can even add them over the disputed areas because they're just points so that they're visible. Yeah, good question. So Agreen in the chat asks why some dots are in the middle of the ocean. So these are like what's called a centroid. So it's kind of the average center. So you notice that in Malaysia, which of course spans multiple islands and peninsulas, the point is kind of in the middle here as like an average, spatial average. Or in Indonesia as well, which is of course hundreds and hundreds of islands. The point might fall in the ocean as kind of like a general middle of the country. On your maps, of course, you can edit this data. So we won't have time to get too deep into that today, but in the end, all data is editable and changeable, and you can customize the data for your maps as you need. If you wanted to move this point a little bit in one direction or the other, we can edit that. I'll put in an advertisement that you can learn to do that in our QGIS Part 2 learning series next month. Okay, so keep taking some time to explore the attributes and play with the symbology of your points. You can change the size, the color, even the shape with different symbols. And we'll learn more on other ways to change the symbology in a moment. Yes, Hyunju, we do have a date, and we'll share how to register for that at the end of the workshop today. You can also see it on our GIS hub. You're welcome, no problem. Okay, so just as an example, maybe I'll make these dots look a little nicer. And feel free to keep sharing the screenshots of your maps. Okay, so if I open the attribute table of these points that we just added, you'll notice it's exactly the same as that CSV we opened in Excel. So of course, that's where the data came from. It's exactly like that, exactly the same. Here's our our longitude, latitude coordinate. But now let's play around with adding some of this other data. So we have these cases here. Here's our sample polio cases. So this could be the case if you work in country. This could be disease cases of some kind or some phenomenon around your country. Right now we're at a global scale, but all this can be scaled up or down to the scope of your projects. And let's check out this cases information. So we have total cases here, the sample polio cases data. And let's have our circles now symbolize those cases. So let's go to our symbology menu for our points. And again, to open that, you can use this little paintbrush icon here on your layer panel. And instead of single symbol this time, which will show all of our features the same, so in my case, all of these pink or purple dots, last time we used categorize, that was to show our WHO region. But this time, let's choose this next option down that says graduated. So graduated is a way that we can show numbers or values. And let's choose graduated there for our symbology of our points, our sample cases points. And you'll notice your points all disappear. That's okay. We will have them reappear in a moment. Let's choose cases here as our value. So in this drop-down menu, let's have it look at that column in the attribute table, that field of cases. And then here we can just click classify at the bottom. And now you'll see that all the points are color-coded by default, this red color for the number of cases, looking at those values in the table. So once again, I changed my symbology here. Note that on your panels, like on this right side, it'll only be changing the settings for which layer you have selected on the left here. So I have to click on to select my points, my top layer, these points. Then I can change the settings in this symbology menu over here on the right. I went to graduated to symbolize them graduated, and you'll notice that now in the field, the values, the fields that it lets me choose, it only lets me choose numbers, number classes, number columns. I can't choose graduated and then like country name, for example. And when I choose cases and then hit classify in the bottom left corner, it now is giving me dark red points for high cases and lighter color points for low numbers of cases. I can even turn off maybe this will be easier to see if I turn off my other layer, so we'll look just at these points and the base map. Cool, so hopefully people are able to do that. And yeah, let's talk about some of these other settings. So you'll see here we can change how it's labeled, but really let's talk about first these down here, these modes and classes. So this is a very tricky part, but important part of cartography and GIS is we're now visualizing data, just like you would if you made a graph or a chart, something like that. And it's very easy to symbolize or visualize your data in a misleading or dishonest way. So right now we're exploring these cases, these global sample polio cases. And depending on what we choose here, if we add more classes or less classes, you'll notice that the points, the colors change. And the mode also, so we can choose different modes here, like I can choose, for example, equal interval.
9
And
simple
now,
words you say before bed to help attract more money while you sleep. The harder you
now,
work.
1 second. Okay, thank you. Now, my points are symbolized quite differently. So these are the statistical ways we can break apart these color-coded categories, right? So I can see that there's a few countries, a few features that have really high numbers in this cases column. And depending on how I classify those, our map tells a very different story. So with any data visualization, it's just a way to tell a story about data. And we have to be careful in how we do that. We want our map to look nice, but we also want it to be honest and tell a true story. So this is where you really need to learn the data that you're working with and make sure that you visualize it appropriately. Here you can click on histogram as well, and we can load values. It's a little hard to see with this data set, but we can see that there's a lot of features with very low polio cases, and there's a few with very high numbers. So these are these big outliers. So play around and see which of these modes to visualize the data and number of classes seems right in your mind on how to visualize the data. You can also change the color ramp here. I think red is not a terrible choice in our case because this is showing cases, polio cases. Red is also for alarming, danger, bad, negative things. But depending on what you're showing, you might want to choose different colors. So you can see there's many different color ramps here we can choose from in QGIS. And we can really customize these as well. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Anytime we visualize data, especially quantitative data, like numbers, totals, values, we have some decisions to make. There's not always one best way to symbolize them, but it does affect the story that our maps tell. So I'll give you one more minute. Keep playing around with these modes and classes and looking at your points to kind of understand the data and make your map just as you like it. Fami, to your question, yeah, points in the ocean. So some of these you can tell are small islands, and some of them might just be slightly offset by how the data was collected or created. For other points, this one could be a mistake, some data cleaning that we would need to do. And again, that's a great thing that we can discuss in the next learning series in July, is how to clean your spreadsheet before you add it to QGIS, and also how to edit it within QGIS. So, but you can see some of these points that are in the ocean, if you zoom in close, are indeed for islands, while others, like we mentioned, Malaysia and Indonesia as some examples, here and here, are kind of the average, the spatial average of that state. So Indonesia, of course, spans these many islands, and the point is kind of in the center, the average center of all those islands. But others, of course, small, if we're having a global map at this scale, small island states are often hard to see, hard to visualize. So that's why these points are, covering the entirety of that state at this scale. But if we zoom in, we should be able to see better what it's representing. In a moment, in like 2 steps from now, we'll add some labels, and that will really help know which data is which. So we'll add some labels to these points, and we can see which country each point corresponds to, and the number of cases and things like that. Great questions. Okay, one other thing we can do, and keep the questions coming and the screenshots. Thanks for sharing how your maps look. One other thing to do is we can change the method here. So I'm on the symbology layer styling panel for my points. Often, if we're showing total numbers like these cases, color is a good way to show it, but we can even better, in this case, I think use size. So now, if I just change this method here from color to size, we can customize the minimum and maximum size of those points. But you can see that now, depending on the number of cases for each point, the size will increase. I think this is a really effective way of showing this data set, is using size. Oops, cancel. So play around with that, see which one you like better. Our two of our major tools in cartography or data visualization with GIS are using color and size to show numbers, to show quantities. So you can adjust these maximum and minimum sizes however you like. And you can see which option you prefer, size or color, for showing these polio cases. And then we'll just do one last thing before we take another 5-minute break. Kuhn, maybe we can help you during the break or in a breakout room with how to re-add this CSV dataset. And feel free to share any screenshots of your maps here with your points showing size rather than color for your totals. Nice, thanks, Adrian. Okay. So the last thing, and then let's take another break. Great maps, Fidan, looking good. So last thing before we take a break is now let's add some labels. So we can label any features that we have on our map, and those can pull directly from the attribute table. Okay, so for example, if I open my attribute table for my points, my cases, I see there's this column that says country, and it has a list of country names. And then this other column that says cases, which is what we're showing on the map. And so we could use either or both of these to add to our labels. So the easiest way to get to the labels settings is on this tab just below our symbology. So we were on this red paintbrush tab, and we can click on that tab that has the yellow ABC tag for some labels. And let's say single labels, so we'll add some labels. And by default, QGIS is guessing, well, it finds this column called country, and it's adding some labels with country names. So it's pretty nice. Automatically, we now have some added country name labels. That really helps our map, improves our map. And these are attached to each point individually. Sometimes the labels might not look exactly how you want them. And you'll see we don't have enough time today to go into all these many settings. But you'll see there's all these menus in here, how to customize your labels. You can, of course, change the font, the size. We can do things like add a buffer, for example. That's this little white outline that can help the labels pop out. There's many things we can do here. Another example is we can automatically wrap labels. So long names like Democratic Republic of the Congo can go on multiple lines. Feel free to play around with these settings here. There's all these many tabs. And you'll notice in GIS, this is very common in any menu, there's many menus within menus. So feel free to explore in there and play around to change the settings however you wish. We can change the label placement. Maybe we want it right on top of the points versus offset from the points and so on. Great maps. Thanks for sharing in the chat. Looking good, everybody. And of course, for these labels, we can change what it shows. So maybe we don't want to show the country name. We want to show the cases numbers. That can kind of help explain why the points are these different sizes. And here we can zoom in and around to see these case numbers. So it should correspond where small points have low numbers and big points have larger numbers. And that really shows how GIS, I think everybody knows that GIS is good at making maps to show your final results, but it can really help as well with your initial just exploring a data set, cleaning a data set, and understanding data at the very beginning level of any kind of study or project. So If you noticed anything weird happening with your data when you're exploring it, like here we have labels of our points, that will help you investigate further what's going on with that data point. And of course, we can customize these labels even further. If we hit this little equation button, we won't do this today, but we can add, do calculations with labels, or we could add multiple things if we wanted to show both the cases and the country name, something like that, we could do it. For today, let's keep it simple and just show one field at a time. But of course, we can get very fancy with labels, and any of these steps we're doing today, we can take them to the next level. Great. Hopefully that makes sense. I know we're covering a lot quite quickly. But thanks everybody for sharing your maps. And I think now let's take another 5-minute break and come back at, let's say, 20 minutes after the hour. Come back in 5 minutes and we'll keep going with our next module. So we'll be on module 4 to do some joins and geoprocessing. So thank you. Let's take a quick 5-minute break and see you back. Okay, everyone, we'll get started in about 1 more minute. I can address these couple questions that are coming up in the chat before we get going here. But we'll just note that we're now starting module 4 on the documentation. So we'll do some joins and geoprocessing tools in this next segment. So yes, QGIS to the question in the chat. Nam, QGIS can connect to APIs, databases, anything online. In fact, our base maps are pulling from online, these base maps here, and even these other OpenStreetMap or those quick map services base maps are pulling from APIs. But we can pull from any data source, really. So whether that's on your computer that you've downloaded, internal databases that require some kind of login, or public open data sources, yes, QGIS can. It depends on the type that you're adding, but there's some different ways to add. But we've already actually shown some examples here of pulling data. We can even pull live data, so it can refresh. Maybe you have there's many types of data sources that are live and updating constantly, and you can have QGIS always be pulling through an internet connection the freshest version of that data. For next, Agreen, your question. Let's see. Yes, so just like how we symbolized our points as using color and size, we can do the same thing with polygons. And I think in this next section, it might help. We can also run different tools to change any of our data. So we might want to consolidate some data together. We might want to combine different layers, things like that. So yes, we can do all those. We can even change maybe a polygon to a point if we want to create points or things like that. So yes, and remember that we're right now have admin level 0, like national only. So like here is our national polygon, but we do have sub-country geometry available. So we can have regions or states, provinces, and in the countries you work in, you might even find more granular, smaller areas, like administrative areas or health boundaries. And of course, you can pull those into QGIS and work in that way. So I think I understood your question, and hopefully that answered it. Yes, and yeah, we'd be happy, Mikhail, for your question, to remember that we have that hub page I can show again. We have this hub page with geodata, so this is a good resource. There is also the Afro GIS Center. There is many other places to find spatial data, of course, not just our hub page. And if you have specific questions, you can reach out on where to find certain data, and we can help you locate that, both within WHO and externally. Cool. So we'll keep moving along here. And again, we're on now module 4. So we'll do some joins and geoprocessing. These are our last 2 steps before we do our final step of making a map. So we're going to end today. Hopefully everybody will be able to create a nice looking map product of a global map of WHO regions. So this next step, let's do what's called a join. So perhaps, and I think this could get to your question, Agreen, as well. We have these points here that were from this table, right? We have by country, some number of polio cases. And again, this is just sample data. Perhaps I don't want to show these cases by these points. We learned some nice ways of visualizing that, but maybe I want to show it for the whole country polygon. So instead of this point for Brazil, for example, showing 5 cases, maybe I want to have the whole country, the polygon of Brazil, what we have here in our health boundaries, have this number 5 attached to it for cases. So this is something very common. When I'm doing our map requests, I do many of these joins every day. And basically, we're going to take this table, so this table with our polio data, and attach it to the attribute table of our health boundaries here, which has many columns, but it doesn't have this polio, sample polio cases that we're interested in. So if you have any spreadsheet with some data, and it matches up with some spatial data you have on a map. Maybe this is by districts of the country you're working in, by region, by health facility. It could be anything. As long as there's some way to match up, like a pivot table in Excel, match up these two tables, we can do what's called a join, an attribute join, and connect them. So I see in our two tables here, we have this ISO 3 code. This is a unique code for each country. And this ISO 3 code as well in our global health boundaries table. So these codes are really nice. They allow us to, oops, second. I might have to close this window for 1 minute. These codes are really nice. They allow us to match things up very, very easily without any spelling differences. So sometimes small spelling or text case differences in a join or special characters can make our join have problems. But in this case, these ISO codes will make it really easy to match up country by country. Okay, so let's add a join. And again, these steps are outlined right here. If you're following along, we're on page 32, module 4, exercise 1. And let's go into the properties. So right click on your health boundaries. So that's the destination of our join. We want to add these polio cases to our polygons, these health boundaries. So right click on there and go to properties. This properties menu should open. Go down to joins on the left, that tab on the left that says joins. And then let's click that green plus button to say add. So we're going to add a join. And again, this is on our health boundaries admin 0. These are our national polygons. Okay, so we're going to add a join. We're going to connect the attribute table from our points to our polygons. And so let's say our join layer, it should be our points, our sample case data layer. Let's choose ISO 3 code as our join field. And let's choose, again, you have to scroll down a little bit, ISO 3 code for our target field. Even though there is ISO 2 code, let's be sure not to choose that one, but ISO 3 code. So hopefully, each of these ISO, these 3-letter codes for each country will match up exactly between these two tables, and therefore it will add our polio cases onto our health boundaries. You can keep all these options the same, and we might change some things later to improve it, but I think you can keep them for simplicity all the same right now. And let's just hit OK and OK. And if that worked, just hit save on your project. Joins are one time when QGIS can easily crash. So hit save. I would guess we have 148 people here today. I would guess at least one person's QGIS probably crashed just now when they hit OK on that join. If that's you, no problem. You can just reopen your project and you should be able to get right back to where you last saved. Okay, so let's check out if this join worked. We can open the attribute table for our admin 0, our health boundaries. We can scroll all the way to the right, and hopefully they have very long column names, but hopefully we have now these new columns, these new fields added to our attribute table, including this one, cases. So this is great. We now have attached this data from one spreadsheet over to another layer. And note, we were able to plot these points on the map because they had coordinates. But if your table doesn't have coordinates, it just has country name or this ISO code, some way to match up, you can match just a straight table over onto some layer you have on your map. Okay, so if it didn't work, you can go back into the properties, go back into your join. You can click this little yellow pencil button to edit your join and make sure you have it exactly like how it's shown in the materials. It's like the screen stopped sharing. Let me reshare. Hopefully, can you see my screen okay now, everybody? Okay. Okay, so if all the values are null, and I would expect that you're not the only person in that situation, that means something didn't go right with the join. So you can in fact hit minus to remove your join, then add a new one, try it again, and just make sure you follow exactly as it's written in the tutorials to match onto your health boundaries from the sample cases, ISO 3 code, ISO 3 code, and OK. If they're all null, it means just somehow this connection didn't work with the join, and you just have to do it again. Once it is successful, just remember to hit save. And then last thing I'll note is right now, because this is like a workshop, this join works perfectly. So if your join was successful, you should see no null values in your new columns over here. Most times, in reality, it's not like this. Some fields don't match from one table to another, so some of your values will be null, or you'll have some empty rows. And if you think that those fields should have values, you can go in and see your table. Why did it not match up exactly with your join layer? So that's very common, and usually joins take a little bit of data cleaning and investigation. In our case, for this workshop, it worked. It should work all perfectly, and each feature should have a value now. Okay. Yeah, so great question. Green asks, why can't we just match the admin 0 name to the country name? You can try if you want. However, you'll notice that it won't work because this is a great point. Thank you for asking that question. On our sample cases data, the country name is in lowercase letters, right? Our first letter is capital and the rest are lowercase. In our table for our health boundaries, the admin 0 name is in all capital letters. There is another column with lowercase as well. That one would work better, and maybe most countries, or perhaps even all, would match well. But these are the little things that joins can make a join have issues or unsuccessful. So even uppercase letters to lowercase letters, computers are smart, but they're also not smart in some ways. So they won't match up well. So that's why these like ISO 3 codes are a nice way. If you're matching something like to health facilities, for example, and each of your facilities has an ID number, you can match ID number to ID number. It'll be a safer join than if it's like a long name of a health facility where any small spelling difference or punctuation difference will cause the join to break. Cool. It looks like a few people in the chat are having problems with the join. That's okay. We actually don't need the join for our final segment. But yeah, see if you can keep trying. So remember to add the join to your health boundaries. And you can follow those screenshots. It might be easier to see than my screen in the tutorial document. And joins are quite tedious, so it's okay if it's not working the first time. Usually they take a few trial and errors. Okay, so in that case, if your join is successful, we now can symbolize our data differently. So I'm going to close this table so you can see my map larger. And now let's go to our health boundaries. I'm going to turn off my points. And I can change the symbology for my health boundaries, my country level polygons. Instead of categorizing by our WHO region, let's go to graduated. And when we choose graduated, we can then select this new column we have called cases. It has this very long name from our join table, but in the end, we can select cases. And say classified. And here, just as before, we have, this is called a choropleth map, where we're showing quantities with colors in these polygons. We can visualize these polio case counts, totals, using color. So you can play around, again, just as before, with different ways to visualize it. And note how different the story your map tells, how different the map looks depending on how you visualize. So we can make it look like there's polio almost everywhere, or polio in very few places, or whatever the data is. In our case, it's this example polio data, or this kind of more even distribution. So you really have to learn your data, again, as we said before, to make sure that you're telling the story of your data truthfully. And another thing to note here, as you're making your maps, and feel free, thank you for those sharing your maps in the chat, is that often on a map like this, we might want to normalize the data. So we don't have that prepared for you in this workshop, but often it could be the case that showing total cases like this, whether it's by country or just in your specific country or region that you work, it might be best, and it often is the case, the best to normalize your data to show case rates, not totals. And we can explain more about how to do that in the next workshop next month. But great looking maps, feel free to share in the chat. Also, as we said before, you can play around with the colors, change the color ramps. You can make your maps very colorful, but remember, colors do have associated meaning. So for example, maybe showing polio cases in this green looks nice, but it might not be the best choice because often green is associated with good outcomes or positive things. So play around with these colors to kind of customize your map and have it look however you want. Feel free to be creative with it. You'll note you can right-click here and invert your color ramps too, if you want to flip them opposite. In our case, I think darker colors corresponding to more cases makes sense. We can also click, let's see, I have to adjust this window. Click on the color ramp and you can really customize things and adjust each step of the color changes however you like. So when you're making your final map products, as we'll make in our final hour of this workshop, you can spend time adjusting all the colors and the symbology to be exactly as you like. Okay, I'll give everybody another few seconds to keep playing around with that, and we'll keep moving along here.
Hi, Cam. Maybe we could answer a few of the questions in the chat while people are playing around.
Sure. Let me just look back, and facilitators, feel free to help me if I've missed any questions.
Yeah, so the last one is, how can we save our own customized color ramp?
Oh, great question. So yeah, in here, you can say create color ramp, edit color ramp, and save color ramp. So if you really like a color ramp that you've made, and you want to keep that for other projects or other maps, you can save things here. You can even say add to favorites. We do have a WHO style guide that we can share, which has some suggested color ramps and color palettes to be kind of on brand on WHO publications. And they have some specific color codes. So while we're talking about colors, I can mention that if you click in to select an exact color, there's a few ways you can select here. There's also, this is very useful, is there's these, there's different ways to, I guess, quantify colors or share them. You can have like RGB, red, green, blue. There are those three numbers here. You can also, I think the easiest one is this HTML notation. There's this 6-digit color code that exactly matches this very specific color. And if you find that code, this will be very common if you're looking around for different colors. You can just copy and paste that color code right into this box, and it will, I can show if I change this color, paste the code, and it'll jump to that exact color. So you can even do things, for example, like there's these add-ons, you can pick a color from online. So I can pick this gray color, for example. There's little add-ons that allow you to pick colors from like a web page. If you want to match colors to another map, I can copy that color code and paste it here and grab that exact color. So for those of you who are a little artistic or like colors and creativity, yeah, GIS is good for you. Hopefully that answers your question. The other one's about the joins. Yes, so if we make changes, right now our join is just in temporary memory. Like QGIS is remembering how to attach these two tables. And if we went and made changes to this table, this CSV, it would indeed either break our join or disrupt it. So it's pulling just directly from this table here, and it's attaching it to our health boundaries. But it's kind of temporary. So we will show at the end, after our next step, how to export data. So if you've done a big join and it was successful, it's always a good idea to export that file and save it. In fact, maybe I'll just show that right now after we answer some of these other questions. Yeah, so Domingo, your question, if there are some unsuccessful joins, the easiest way to do it is to go into your CSV, open it up in Excel or some kind of spreadsheet editor, and clean or adjust any data. Maybe there's a spelling difference or some kind of difference, and then just save that as a new CSV and try the join again with that new one. That's something that I do very frequently. Alternatively, in QGIS, if you wanted to edit a table here, you can, and we'll talk more about how to do that next month. But in general, we can turn on this yellow pencil for any layer. I suggest don't do this now, otherwise it could mess some things up. But we can turn editing mode on any layer, and then we can change and adjust where it is on the map, or its shape, or any of the attributes. So that's another way to do some data cleaning or formatting to improve your joins or make your joins work successfully. Yeah, but just remember that the joins are stored in temporary memory. It's like QGIS is just remembering how to attach these tables. They're not physically attached yet. But why don't we just show how to export? So once you have a join that you like, it was successful, it's a good idea to save that as a new file. So let's have everybody, even if your join was not successful, that's okay. Let's right click on our health boundaries layer. Let's say export, and then save features as. So once again, I right clicked on the layer I want to export. So we're going to save this as a new file. I can go to export, save features as. Here, there's many options of file types to save to. I think let's just choose this top one, a geo package. And you just need to click this, rather than just typing in a name here, remember to click this button, this ... button, to choose where to save your file. I'll save it right in our data folder for this workshop. I'll say joined polio cases admin 0, something like that. Give it any appropriate name and say save. And then OK. And we now have a new layer added. I'll go through those steps one more time. But we have a new layer added, and this is a new file that we just wrote. Here it is, onto our data folder. In this case, a geo package file type. And in that file, the join is sealed. So now those joined columns in the attribute table are just permanently attached. They're not connected through that join any longer. So in general, once you do a join successfully, the next step is just to export that as a new file, and then your join is locked in. You've permanently attached those two tables together. Okay, great questions. And thanks, team, for helping out. Hopefully we answered all those questions. Jing, let me know if there's any more that we didn't get to.
Maybe we can take just a quick pause before we get too far along, in the sense that the chat can get pretty busy.
Sure.
This is a time where I do welcome anyone in the training to either raise their hand if they didn't get a question answered. It's tough to tell because I know we sort of layered on some questions and some were answered and some were not. So did anyone want to raise their hand and ask a question? Okay. If not, then I think we're okay to move ahead for now.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. I know this is a long training. We're in our third hour, just about. So appreciate all of your time and attention. We're moving along quite nicely. So let's do one more step. If you weren't able to do the join, no problem. We're kind of moving on from that. But we wanted to show in this training do one example of these things called geoprocessing tools. So there's a lot of tools built into QGIS. If you have this little blue gear icon on your top toolbar, you can click that. Or on the top menu, you can go to Processing and Toolbox. And that should open this menu on the right side of all these many processing tools. So you can see here, there's all these menus. There's many tools that we can run to do analysis or data formatting, all sorts of stuff we can do here. So of course, in our short time together, we won't be able to cover too many of these, and we'll just do one. But I encourage you to play around with these and see there's likely a tool for any task already built that, that you'd want to do in GIS. In our case today, we're going to use this tool called Dissolve. And what that will do is we'll kind of remake our regions map, but we'll consolidate all the countries that have the same attribute. So I'll turn this one on. I think it'll be easier. For example, in the Afro region, I can highlight most of the Afro countries here. All these have in the attribute table are listed as in the Afro region. We can just combine those using this dissolve tool to all be one feature. So instead of many country features here, we can use this tool dissolve to all combine those into one. And thanks, Jing. We're on page 37, module 5. So this could be the case that maybe you have small districts within your region or country, and you want to consolidate those into larger areas or something like that. We can run this dissolve tool. So you can join us next month for our next one, and we'll use some further GIS tools. But in this processing toolbox here on the right side, if you just search for dissolve, DISS, you should find this tool under vector geometry called dissolve. If some people don't have this processing menu on your top menu, let us know. I know how to activate it. On some computers, when you first install QGIS, it's not active. If that's the case for anybody, let us know and we can help you. You just have to go into your plugins manager and check this box for processing. So I bet a few people in our room today have that issue. I'm not sure what causes it, but just go into your plugins and check processing, and then that should pop up on your top toolbar for your processing toolbox. Okay, and that will again open this menu on the right side. Instead of sorting through all those many tools, let's just search for dissolve, and we can open this tool called dissolve. So double click it, and it should open up. Okay. This is a pretty simple tool. All we have to do is put in our input layer. So we can choose any of our admin 0 polygons. Doesn't matter which one if you have multiple. And then let's choose for our dissolve fields, we have to say, okay, which is the field that we want to consolidate or combine all these features into? And let's select WHO region. I can say OK. So it should say WHO region in our dissolve field. And in this tool, some tools are very complicated with many options here, but this tool is quite simple. We're just putting in our health boundaries and dissolving by WHO region. I'll click run. Might take a few seconds. And then close. And our result, if I just rearrange this a little bit, will now be a similar looking world map. But now the regions are combined into just one feature. So you can see here is Wipro, Ciro, Emro, Afro, Euro, and Emro or PAHO. Great, so once again, in the processing toolbox, which I opened on this little blue gear icon or went to processing and toolbox, you can see all of our tools here. In our case, our example tool, I searched for dissolve. I open that up and just be sure to choose our health boundaries and let's dissolve by our WHO region. And I click run. Your resulting layer will always be named by the tool that created it. So in our case, it says dissolved. Yours is likely a different color than mine. But we can open the table and see that indeed there are only 6 features, where before we had how many? 241. Now we're down to 6, 1 for each region. You will notice in the table, so I see here's each region name. We do have kind of a random, or I think it might be in fact alphabetical order, a country name attached to each of those. So of course, this whole Emro region is not only Afghanistan, but when we dissolved, it took the first field and retained that value. So when we run a tool, this is a good thing to point out. We want to look at the results and make sure we understand the results. So there could be some things after a tool has been run that are just a legacy of the previous data, the original data that we processed. So be sure to check that and know how to use your results appropriately. Okay, and I'll just put my WHO disputed base map above my dissolved layer. And now that we have so many layers, remember to not have everything checked at once. If your map looks a little bit cluttered and too busy, be sure to uncheck everything. So I just have a base map here, my resulting dissolved layer checked, and my disputed symbology on top of that. Great. Next, hopefully everybody was able to run dissolve. And we now have our regional map. Oops. Okay, here we go. And the last thing I'll point out, nice, looking good. Thank you, Nabiu, for sharing. So if you're not able to select the features on your dissolved map, remember, if you're trying to select and you have selection mode on, you'll only select the layer that you have selected in blue on the left side. So if I want to select my regions now, I can. However, if I have a different layer selected here on the left, I won't be able to select anything on my map because I have this other layer selected. So if you want to select a layer, you have to click it on the left side, highlight it in blue, and that will allow you to then select your features. I hope that makes sense. Nice, great. Okay, last thing I'll note about our dissolved layer. So this is what we'll use for our final map of our WHO regions. Last thing I'll note is that, do you see this little icon beside your layer? It says dissolved. And then it has this little like a microchip, looks like a small insect icon. And it says temporary scratch layer only. So this is important, is when you run a tool, you can save the results as a file, but usually if you don't specify that, it will just create one of these temporary layers. So this saves a lot of space on your computer. If every time you ran a tool, especially if it was a lot of data and it created a new file, your project would quickly become so big with lots of files. So QGIS tries to save space on your computer by creating these temporary layers. And only when you have your results that you want or your final results will we save that as a permanent file on your hard drive or store it wherever you need to. So if you have your dissolved results, they look good. This is our different regions. Let's export this just as we did before. So this is another practice in exporting. And we want to save these not as a temporary file, but as an actual file. So we can go right click on dissolved, go to export, save features as, just as before. Let's save it in our data folder, and we can say WHO regions, give it a name, something like that. I suggest no spaces in your file names. And say OK. So now our resulting layer doesn't have that little microchip icon noting it's a temporary layer. We should have a actual file saved. So usually if you're running some tools, you can keep them as temporary until you know that you have the correct results you want, and then just export it. Great, hopefully that makes sense. Don't see any questions, so it seems like that was okay. Let me know if you need me to repeat those steps or if it makes sense how to export our data. So we've now exported two. We exported our joined data and these WHO regions. For the last part of this workshop we're entering now, we'll just use this WHO regions layer. So if your joins had some problems or anything, no worries. We'll just be using this WHO dissolved regions layer. Oh, okay, so if you're let's see, I'm looking at the screenshots now. It could be that you're dissolved. It only ran for the selected layer. So if you run a tool, for example, if I had some features selected here and I ran a tool, sometimes it might only run for those features you have selected. So in your case, maybe it could be where Aruba was selected and the dissolved only shows that. Otherwise, I'm not sure. Try Totan. Try to just rerun the dissolve and see if it works then. And then Fidan, also a good question. So you see in that screenshot, it shows your geo package has 3 files. Mine is not showing that for some reason. I actually expected it to. But when you see those extra files, those, as everybody can see in the chat on that screenshot, those are just temporary files while it's open. So it's kind of like a lock where now your computer knows that that geo package, it has those 2 with a little bit longer file extension, that those are open somewhere. And once you close QGIS, those 2 small files will go away and there'll just be 1 geo package. So great question. I'll also note we're saving things as geo packages. There's many file types, like including a shape file. We don't have time to get into that in this training, but they're treated very similarly. Shape files are a very common file type.
and they always have multiple files like that when they're open or closed. So note when you're using a shapefile, there's always multiple files there. And that is a very common file type you will encounter. And if you have questions about file types and trying to open some data, you can stop by our office hours or send us an email, and we're always happy to help. Great. We're making great progress here. And Tet Totan, let us know if you were able to run that dissolve, or if not, we can have one of the facilitators help you out. But nice job, everybody, and thanks for sticking with us in our final hour here. Okay, so last step before we maybe take our final quick break before we make our map layouts is let's review, let's practice symbolizing your regions. So I'll turn back on my regions layer. And if you want, you can also clean up your layer. So I'll remove my original dissolved layer. I can remove some of these other extra things. I don't even need my points right now. So I can right click on any layers and hit remove, and I'll clean up my project so it's a little bit easier. And now let's style your regions by color. So let's go to categorized. So I'm clicking on my regions, my final exported layer. In the style menu on the right, let's categorize by WHO region and classify. And you'll see you have different colors for each region. And this will be for our final map. So take some time to make the colors look nice. Choose as you want. Maybe I'll adjust so Euro is not this alarming, scary red color. Maybe so Paho is not quite so blue. And take some time to one by one adjust your colors as you like. Okay. And then you don't need to join for the WHO disputed areas. So that's just a layer we can put on top of our other layers. No need to join. We don't really need any attribute data for like the WHO regions. In our case, we can just add that layer on the very top, like this. And that will just be going over some of these disputed and politically sensitive areas. A great question. Thank you. So take a minute to get your colors however you like them. And then let's also add some labels to our regions. So we can go to the labels, that ABC menu here on our layer styling panel on the right side. And we can add WHO region. Labels to each of our regions. And maybe I'll add these little text buffers to the label so you can see them more easily. So once again, I'm just changing the symbology for my Who regions dissolved layer. I'm categorizing it by region. So each region has a different color. One by one, we can change those colors however we'd like. And then I'm adding some labels for each region as well. And this is preparing for our final map that we're going to create in just a moment. Okay, feel free to share any screenshots of your maps as they are now. Great, thank you, Pierre. Looking great. Hyunju, thank you. Looking good. Yeah, so agreeing for your question, how to reposition the labels. We can do that. And why don't we save that, however, for the last step. So when we make our print layout, so in a moment, we're going to open a layout view where we can arrange our final map. We might want to move our labels around, and we can show how to do that at the very end. That's usually something we save for last. In our case, we only have 6 labels, but if you're making a map with many labels, like maybe for each region or sub-region in a country, or like many health facilities, the labels can be a really time-consuming part of the map. So let's save that till the end, and I can show how to move them around. If I forget, Agreen, please let me know, and I'll circle back to it at the end. Cool. So next, let's make our print layout. I know we've been going for quite a while, but I think we can make our layouts, and we'll give everybody time to create those. And so at that point, if you need to step away for a bathroom break or something, you can. But let's do this next part, and I think it'll be good for our timing. Great. So let's go up to project. Even if your regions map is not perfect yet, that's okay. Let's go up to project in the top left corner and click on new print layout. So here we just give it a name. I'll say Who regions. Maybe I'll say this is our June 2024 training and say OK. So again, on my main window, I went to project, new print layout, and I gave that layout a name. And now I have this new window that opens. Okay, so this is like our blank page. This is where we will create our map, our final like map for printing. And you'll notice there's 2 windows. So we have this one, and we have our main QGIS window. So you'll have to jump back and forth between these 2 windows quite a bit. So try and arrange your screens. I know it's hard with you're looking at my shared screen and your own QGIS, now 2 windows. So try and arrange those so you can see them and jump back and forth. If you hover down here, it'll allow you to jump back and forth. Or you can use whatever keyboard shortcuts you have to jump back and forth between these 2 windows. Okay, so this print layout is this is our page here. I can zoom in and out, but this is like our blank page for printing. And right away, I can right click on that and say page properties. Right click page properties. And you should see all these properties, item properties for your page here. So this is where you can choose your page size, the orientation, if you want it portrait or landscape, and all of that. That's an important step to do at the very beginning. Of course, if your map is going to be part of just a small map in a publication versus a huge like A0 printed wall map, it's a good thing to know at this stage in the beginning. It's not always easy to change the scale later. For our case, I think we can leave the default A4, and landscape will fit our global map nicely. And then let's go to this Add Item menu on the top toolbar. And we'll spend a lot of time for this last bit of this workshop in this menu. So we can add all these different items to our layout. And the first one we'll do is add map. Okay, so add item, add map. When we say add map, we can just click and drag, draw a big box around your whole page. Let it go. And we should see our map added there. So once again, I can do it again. I'll go to add item on my layout window, add map, click in one corner of the page, click and drag and drop it on the other corner. And we should see our map right there. Now, it might not be the perfect position yet, but we will adjust that next, so no problem. Okay, you'll notice on your layout window now, you have these items over here. We're going to add different items to our map, but right now we just have map 1. Hanju, thank you for the question. So to change the color of the ocean, that all relates to the base map. So in fact, I think for my simple map, I can just turn the base map off. And you'll note that once you make any changes on the main window, they will be reflected on your print layout. So we can jump back and forth. We can make some changes on our main window, and then we can look back onto our print layout, and they will be reflected. Sometimes you just need to push this refresh button here. We make some changes, like if I turn this back on, for example, refresh, and now those changes are made. I think that Sadiq's example above, he has like probably that OpenStreetMap base map or some base map that has blue, a blue ocean color. So you can, of course, add those as you need. Creativity is encouraged. You don't have to match my map exactly. Nice. Thanks, Domingo. And we will adjust our maps next, and I think that will help. Although, make sure, if you select your map frame, you'll see these little white boxes are in the corners. Be sure that your map frame is exactly matching on top of your page, or if it's inside of your page like this, that's okay as well. I think easiest, I'll just maximize it like here. But if it is offset like this white box originally that's your page that will print. So if your map is offset dangling off, only this part here would get printed. So be sure to match it up well onto your page. And then for the, so the text sizes of your labels or the outlines, things might look a little different or weird size here compared to the main window, but we can adjust those things later. So that's why we're saving like some things till the very end. Some things might look a little bit different proportions on your main window compared to your print layout. Okay. Next, and I think this will also, Domingo, help answer your question is perhaps if your map is something like maybe like this or off, not aligned, or maybe it's too far zoomed in or it's not aligned, let's fix that. So let's have everybody do this. Even if your map looks quite centered, let's click on your map frame. So your map is selected here. And this is a confusing part of the layouts, but we can do it. This will be an important part, and the rest is quite easy. On the left side menu toolbar, we have all these options. So let's click on your map so it's selected. And then click this button that says Move Item Content. This one with the blue arrows. There's 4 blue arrows, this button over here. Once we click that, now we can move and zoom on our map, just like we can on the main window. We can zoom in, zoom out, and move the map just till how we like it to arrange it on our map. You'll notice if I zoom, it zooms a big jump. So if you hold down Control, you can zoom very finely and get your map just right how you want to place it on your page. Once you have it in a good place, I suggest turning back on selection mode here on the left side, that white arrow button. Unselect your map. And then you can click Lock over here on the right side. That will make it so you can't select or move your map anymore. This little lock button. So once again, if you want to move your map or change its zoom or its extent, I select it. I click this Move Item Content button on the left. It's that button with 4 little blue arrows. I can move my map then. I can zoom. When I have it where I want it, I can turn back on this selection mode, that white arrow on the left side. I can unselect my map. And even to be safe, I can click this lock button here on my item content, and that will make my map kind of locked in place, so I can't accidentally move it around any further. This is often the hardest part for people learning on these print layouts, so don't be frustrated if it takes some time to place your map correctly. If you're way zoomed in or out or can't find it, you can always just delete your map item and add a new one, and that might be helpful. Okay. Give everybody a few more seconds to play with that. Thank you all for sticking with it. We still have 142 people here, so appreciate all of you for being here for more than 3 hours now. So thanks a lot. And again, feel free to share any screenshots of your very nice looking maps as you're making them. Okay, cool. Don't see any questions coming through. Nice, Pierre. Thank you for sharing. Looking great. Very nice maps. Looking good. And then remember, if you want to change the data that's shown on your map, you can jump over to your main window. I could add my points or change anything, and then that will be reflected once I refresh on my main, my print layout window. What's going on? Nice. Thank you for sharing. Mohammed, awesome. Alvinas, looking very good. Nice. Fun to see your maps coming through. Okay, so you can keep making changes as you need. Let's just talk about how to add the few finishing touches on our map. So it'll all be in this Add Item menu on your print layout window. We can add all sorts of other things. So for example, we could add a label here to add a title. We can add a legend, a scale bar, north arrow, shapes, all sorts of things that we can add to adorn our map, to add text to it, and kind of complete this to make it like a professional map product. We can add a picture if you want to add a logo or something like that, of course. For now, let's do add a label. So you can choose where you want to put your label. Drag and draw a box somewhere where you'd like to place your label for your title. So again, I went to Add Item, Add Label. Here I can say something like WHO Global Regions. You'll notice that now I have more items on the right side here. So I have my title, and when I select those different items, here's my map, here's my title. On the Item Properties menu here on the right side, there's all these properties we can change. So here we can change the font and everything about this text box we just added. So of course I need to make this font much bigger. So I'll click on Font and adjust. Maybe this fits better down here. WHO, the style guide, we often use this Source Sans Pro font for our map products and publications. But of course, for this one, feel free to use any font you want. And you can adjust all those settings here in this Item Properties. Great, and we can keep adding other things in the same way. So we can add a scale bar. I think that scale might not be totally accurate. So we'd have to look into that. I don't think this is 150 kilometers. That might be some kind of a projection thing. For time, maybe we'll just ignore that one for now. We can add a north arrow, probably not necessary for a global map like this, but just as examples, we can add all these kind of mappy adornments to our final layout. We can add a legend, of course. I think for this map, we actually don't really need a legend because we have each color-coded area labeled, but if we want to add a legend, we can do so. You'll notice it adds all of the layers on your map at first. So you'll have to go into the legend properties. You can uncheck this box that says auto update. And that will allow you to choose by subtracting this red minus sign, which map layers you want to show. So again, I went to add item, add legend. I drew a box where I want my legend to go. And then to adjust which layers are shown, I can uncheck this auto update box. Or you can click only show items inside linked map. That's another option as well. I can customize this, so maybe I want to remove this extra one or change this title, who regions. I can customize my legend accordingly. Yes, so with any elements, you can reposition the label. So if we click on that item, like on the top right side here, you'll see here's all of our items that we've added. So on the bottom, we should have our map. And stacked on top of that, we should have all these things we've added. So you can click on one and then move them however you want. So a lot of times this takes quite a bit of time playing around and seeing how to adjust everything. You might need to adjust your map again. So of course you can do that just as we did before. And like I said, this is a fairly simple map. We might not even need a legend in this case. Probably we don't need a north arrow as well, since it's a global map. But just as in the main window, we can uncheck any of these items on our map layout. So it's kind of the same principle. We have these map items here, just as we had our layers on our main window. Yeah, so if you want a transparent legend background, you definitely can do that with any of these items if you click on them. So I'll click on my legend, for example. In this item properties menu on the bottom right, you can scroll down and see there's lots of options here. Each of these is a drop-down menu with options upon options upon options. And I can uncheck this box for background for the question in the chat. And that will make it have a transparent background. See, I'll move this here. Okay, so I'm just arranging things. You can see this part takes some time on how to place things. You can, perhaps, I don't think we have time today, but you can add multiple map frames. So maybe we want to have this global map, and then we want to add a new map of zoomed in to somewhere in particular. We can do that. So we just say add map, we draw another box, zoom to where we want that, and we can show multiple maps at different scales. Those maps can even have different layers shown. And to do that, we can kind of lock the layers on one map frame. We won't have time to do this today, but we can lock the layers on one of the map items, and that will freeze it. Then we can go to our main window, adjust the layers we want to show in our next map item on our layout, and zoom to where we want that to be and have that. So you can have many map items on one layout, each showing whichever different information, whichever you want it to show. Yeah, again, Fidan, for the legend, in the beginning it adds so many things. Just uncheck this auto update box, and then you can click on items that you don't want and hit this little red minus sign. Sure, so once again, adding the legend, we can go to add item, add legend. I'll just add another one here. And at first, I have too many things. As you can see how big this legend is. It's all the layers I have in my project. So One shortcut is I can click this only show items inside linked map button, and that can help me just show the ones that are visible currently. Or I can uncheck this auto update and one by one just remove the ones I don't need until I have just the ones I want. And then within that menu, I can just double click and edit any of these however I want. So maybe I know AMRO and PAHO are synonymous. I might want to change that, AMRO to PAHO. That is up to your discretion as the cartographer. Great. Last thing to add, let's make sure everybody adds, you can add your name in the corner in smaller text and the date, and then data sources too. So it's always good to, very important to add the date to any map. Of course, this map is not too time sensitive, but most maps have more time sensitivity in the data that they contain. And data sources as well. So we can say data sources for this one, just WHO. And I'll put June 2024. If you're making a map for publication, we do have a big disclaimer on all of our map products that we need to add. And you can reach out for more questions about that individually, but for legal compliance with the WHO published map, we do have additional things we need to add on there, like a legal disclaimer and some further items about these disputed borders and areas. Great, so remember to save your project now that we've done a lot. And we might not have time to make your maps perfect. Takes quite a bit of playing around to get everything exactly where you want it. Not so happy with mine right now, but let's make a few adjustments. Let's see. Okay, good enough for these purposes. Okay, and then looking at the clock, let's show how to export our final map. So it's okay if your map is not totally finalized and perfect yet, but I can show how to export our map to publish it as an image, and then we can take any more individual questions. I remember there was an ask about how to move, adjust individual labels, things like that. I can address that, but first let's show the very last step of the process in exporting our final map layout as an image. So we can go to layouts here, and no matter what stage your map is in, let's all follow along and do this together so you can practice it. And then you can go back to adjusting your map as needed. Thanks, Aparajita. So yeah, we're on our final step here of exporting our map, our print layout. So let's all do this together. If you click on layout, export as image. Let's choose our data folder where we're saving everything for this. And I think I'll choose to save this as a PNG. You could save it in any of these file types. PNG is usually a good choice. And I can say save. I'll go through these steps one more time as well, but you can leave all these export options as their default values. This is where we're deciding how many pixels and what like the printer resolution is. But let's just say save. And should only take a moment. It's a pretty small image file. We can open it up. and see, here's our final image. So a lot of times, some things might look a little bit different on your final image compared to the QGIS window. Like for me, I see these very dark border lines on these coastlines. I think I'll adjust that. So I can look at my image, check it out, edit it, or go back into my QGIS and edit as needed. So just as a quick example, maybe I'll go in and I can even say no lines. Ooh, that's looking much nicer. Refresh. Don't think we need those big dark coastlines. And now I can export, save my project, export my image again. Maybe I'll just overwrite that previous one. Save. And here's my new map. Okay, I think it looks much better. So again, these are just some super simple maps for this purpose of this training. There actually are a few things that would make this still need a few requirements to be legally compliant with all of our rules, but we're getting pretty close. Also, a screenshot versus a export layout. So yeah, a screenshot is okay. Like if I take this screenshot, I guess we can show the difference. I'll take this screenshot and I'll put it in the chat. It'll be okay, certainly. But it'll be a little bit lower quality. Looks like, let's see, can I put this in the chat? No, it's not letting me upload my image file, but my final image file will just be a little bit higher quality when you zoom in to a screenshot than compared to a screenshot. So yeah, if I zoom in here, I can see it's the quality will be much better than just a screenshot, especially if your screen is smaller size. This image will be much higher quality. On our map right here, it's not so noticeable because it's a very simple map. But if your map has a lot of details like roads and small points, small features, it'll be very, very noticeable, the difference. When you export images, so I chose this export image option. There's many types. So if you're good or you're working with a designer for a publication, they might want it in a SVG or PDF format. Maybe they're going to use Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator to make changes. Those are good options. But in general, many people know PDF as an option. It's not always the best choice for publishing our maps. So I suggest you use these map images. A PNG or a JPEG image is good. Ted, beautiful map. Looks really great. I even like you added the neat line around the outside, the border line. Awesome. If you're done for removing lines, I just went over to the symbology on my main window. I clicked on this symbol here. And in the settings, I can remove the line. Again, not essential, not mandatory, but just an example of one little change we can make to the map, and it can make it look much nicer. Great, so that's really the full process. We were going to show how to adjust labels. So keep working on your maps. If you want to move your labels around a little bit, you can go back to your main QGIS window. And we only have about 15 minutes left, so I'll show this step, and then we'll open it up if there's any other pressing questions. Adrian, beautiful map. Thank you for sharing. And let's see. you should have this layer toolbar up here with all these little yellow ABC buttons. If you don't, you can go right-click on your top toolbar and add the label toolbar. If you don't see all these little buttons on your top toolbar that have ABC, this yellow tag. And then there's one with an arrow. It's called Move a Label. And this is how we can really refine where we want to place these labels. So when I click on one, this menu will pop up. This is just kind of, if you're moving many different layers, labels for many different layers, this will help identify which ones you're moving. But for now, we can just say OK. And here, I can now adjust exactly where I want to put my labels. Maybe I'll put MRO right here. I can squeeze 0 right here. But then notice that when I refresh my layout, they might be in slightly different places because the scale is different between the two. So take some jumping back and forth, move your labels around, jump back over here, refresh your map layout, and make sure it's looking just like how you want it. And then, of course, save, and you can export your new updated map as you want. Usually takes many exports, many rounds to get your map just right. Cool. I think your maps are looking much better than mine. So nice work, everybody. Thanks for sharing. And yeah, that's kind of the full process. So once again, you can always refer back to these tutorials that we've covered here for this step-by-step demo. These will remain available, of course. Here's an example of a little bit more complex map shown in our WHO template as an example. And as a reference for you, just starting to wrap up here, in the data folder, there are these other QGIS projects. So if you weren't able to follow all the steps, there's this one called QGIS training. That is kind of the answer key, or that's a completed project for all the steps we've done today. There's also this will be a great resource, this one that says QGIS WHO template. It has all the WHO base maps preloaded, ready to go. So anytime you want to work with QGIS, you can open that up. It has our base maps ready to go, and you can hit save that as a new project for whatever you're working on. Great. Also, please stay in touch, and you can check out our GIS Hub for our future trainings. Like I mentioned, next month we'll have a follow-up, a QGIS Part 2, where we build off of these basics that we learned today to go to the next step and use QGIS in more and deeper ways. We'll stick around for a few more minutes if there's questions. But thanks, everybody. Really appreciate you being here for 4 hours, and look forward to seeing you at some of our future trainings. I do think we ask, maybe Jing will be sharing this in a moment, but we do have a survey. Please do fill out this short survey and can give us feedback on how we can improve these trainings and any thoughts you have on today's training and what trainings you might want in the future.
Yes, I just put the link in the chat, but it is also pinned at the top of the chat as well in case it gets lost within there. In the post-learning survey link, there is the opportunity to share interest in a post-learning office hours if that is of interest to you. But at the end of this, I'll stop the recording shortly. well, once that is developed, we will be sending out the recordings, as well as the links we provided for this training. So if you have other team members who weren't able to make it, or you want to follow along again or at your own pace, that will be available to you. And then we'll also be providing the link for QGIS Part 2, which will be happening in July. So yes, be on the watch out for that. It will be sent to the email that you recorded in the registration. And if for whatever reason there is a mix-up there, you can reach out to GIS support at who.int, which I just put in the chat. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thank you.